The first part is watching 3 News talk about the, what do they call it? The coward punches. It used to be called the king hit. I mean, it's going to be so hard to actually do this in the courts because how do you know? How do you know if it's a king hit? I mean, most people aren't ready for a punch when they get punched, or else they wouldn't be standing where they were standing. And also this does roll into conversations around attacks on first responders. So let's have a look, first of all, at the setup to the story from 3 News tonight.
The government has announced it will introduce legislation to make a coward punch a specific offence. It used to be called a king hit when the victim is hit unaware. The government says people can...
Because you're not aware, Chewie. Most people are really aware that they're going to get hit. They stand there and they are aware that the fist is coming. They're going, okay, I'm aware that that's going to hit me. That's most people apparently who get punched. They're aware. Not like every single person is unaware to some level.
Can be killed or suffer lifelong brain injuries. Yet perpetrators often receive lenient and insufficient sentences. But one prominent lawyer says existing laws already deal with this kind of offence. Adam Hollingworth reports.
Punches like...
Oh no, not meaningless legislation that create a good headline on the Herald that aren't going to help society one iota but look good in print and enable you to say we're tough on crime. Not that kind of legislation again, Chewie.
These can be deadly, and that's why the government is acting.
Well, it's the level of, well, cowardice for a start. The victim has no notice, and because of that, the chance of them defending themselves
5 to 10
is just
working
impossible.
days.
So we want to...
I'm wondering why Mr. Peters is dressed like Tony Soprano. Well, has he just been to like a dinner theatre or something? I'm confused by the look.
Spell out how acceptable it is.
What we're doing with this legislation is sending a clear message from Parliament to the courts and to society as a whole that this is something that we won't tolerate, and if you do it, you'll get an extra severe sentence.
We're on the side of the victim, not the offender.
Under the proposed changes, maximum sentences would be 8 years if the offender intended to cause injury or acted with reckless disregard for safety, 15 years if the offender intended to cause grievous bodily harm, and life for a culpable homicide.
Can I just say as well, none of the ones they're showing are what we think of when it's a coward's punch. Those 3 last ones, which looked horrific, the people were face to face the whole time. That's not a coward's punch. A coward's punch is when you fly in from behind, no seeing, no nothing. So even the media is now talking about this legislation when these people, I mean, it's horrific footage. I'll mute it while I play it, are standing in front of them, hitting them, standing in front, hit them. So it's not that they're not king hits. So is the media just got it wrong, or are they not aware? Like the coward's punch or the king hit is typically when you don't see it coming, when someone runs in from behind. That's what it is. None of those would have been a part of this legislation. So what the media is showing you to reinforce this story is not what the legislation is going to rule on, which just goes to show how difficult it is. The editors didn't know. Editors at TV3 didn't know what one was because they put the wrong footage in there.
A recent case, promising MMA fighter Falbake died here after being punched in 2021 on Auckland's Simon Street. The man who threw that punch, Daniel Harvey, received a sentence of 2 years and 9 months.
For the victims like Foe, his family, and for other victims, this will certainly act as a little bit of solace that at least...
Yeah, my son died on Simon Street, but at least the next person is going to get an extra 2 years. That makes me feel so much better. This is just lunacy. It's a ridiculous talking point.
Out of those deaths, there has been some movement.
Falbake's trainer, Mike Angove, is on the board of the Walk Without Fear charitable trust. He says education and legislation is the way to go.
But if you don't have a serious deterrent in terms of your sentencing, then there's no real disincentive to change your behaviour.
So, Chewie, following that theory, we should make it the death penalty, because if people are going to change their behaviour based on the sentence, then make the sentence as severe as possible, then everyone will be angels. It's just mind-numbingly stupid. Mind-numbingly.
I think the fundamental thing that all of these people are missing is the guys that are throwing these punches aren't writing up a pro and cons list before they do it.
Yeah.
They all think they're going to get away with it,
Yep.
and they're not aware of what the sentence is. It's not a deterrent.
And they're drunk in Simon Street at 2 a.m. Yeah.
It's not like this. I understand that the government wants to seem that they're tough on crime, and the only thing that they have in the bag is to increase sentencing because they haven't been able to get more police to be out actually on the streets stopping these things before they happen.
Yeah.
That's the deterrent, is I can't smack this guy in the face because I literally saw a cop 2 doors up walking the beat on a Saturday night. That's the deterrent. Thinking that you will get immediately pinched for it.
And Chewie, this government's in control of that because they promised us 500 cops by the end of this year, and in their first 20 months, they got like 30 brand new ones. So they're onto it. They've got it sorted out. How about this, Mr. Luxon? How about you pay your cops? And I'm not necessarily saying this is just me calling out the bullshit. How about you pay your cops $200K a year? Then you'll see if you've got a shortfall at the end of every year. How about you pay your nurses $200K a year? See if you've got a shortfall after that. How about you pay your doctors $500K a year? You know, what about all that money that's going to landlords and tax rebates, refunds? How about you put that into the public sector, maybe as Gary Pender would say, somewhere on the front line, and then see if you've still got staff shortages. I suspect you wouldn't have anywhere near as much if you drove all that money, all that $19 billion into nurses, doctors, police officers, armed services if you want to. There'd be no shortages.
I see we've dragged in a bunch of crunchies on this one, actually.
Welcome.
So, go cry, woke lefties. Cool. Thanks for your input. Look, nobody's in the corner of these people throwing these punches.
Of course not.
Like I would say that I've been coward punched in Cuba Street when I was up in Wellington by a fucking drunk teenager, high out of his mind. I said something he didn't like. He ran up behind me, hit me in the back of the head. It happens. But for these politicians to sit there and go, we want to create a deterrent. It's not a deterrent. I 100% guarantee the guy that smacked me in the back of the head wasn't worried about the consequences.
Of course not.
They never are.
Of course not. I mean, this is what the consequences do. The consequences remove that person from society for a period of time. That's all they do. Now, this is leading quite nicely to Tamara Paul's conversation, because when they're in prison for longer, they then get upskilled in the ways of crime and they come out being better criminals. We'll get onto that next, but let's get to the end of the story.
But prominent lawyer Marie Dyberg KC says the existing legislation works well. It's measured as an aggravating factor in an assault.
If we dispute the facts that make an offence more culpable because of the circumstances, we have that court, and a court decides.
Whoa.
It doesn't make sense.
Not anymore. This is what we were just talking about. The courts don't decide, the government decides. This is my big concern.
None of this legislation makes sense. It's just nonsense.
Dyberg says the legislation is a total waste of time.
There's nothing magical about one punch. It is nonsensical. A fight is a fast-moving, non-static incident. So when is the one punch going to be the cowardly punch?
Bingo.
When you've got a series of punches.
Over the past few days, the government's been announcing it's getting tougher on sentences, also restricting judges from shortening them and targeting those who attack first responders.
They're all practical, common sense things that I think the regular New Zealanders watching this conversation will say that's good stuff.
The consequences will be a fast-growing prison population, but the government argues it's got to put people inside short-term to ensure there's a drop in crime.
Yeah, so you put them inside short term, the crime drops off, then they come out are more advanced and more connected. I think Tabitha says this in our conversation. It's called the Department of Connections, not the Department of Corrections, because that's what happens inside prison. They get connected, they get fitter, they get stronger, they get upskilled, and they come out onto the streets as better criminals. That's why, whānau, that's why crunchies, that locking them up and throwing away the key for 10 years is maybe not always, and I won't say never, maybe not always the best solution. Surely what we want is the best solution for the victims, the best solution for society, and we actually want what's the best solution for the offender as well. Because if, like what Chewie was saying, the offender was impacted by something else, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's mental health, just putting them inside and throwing away the key just may amplify all of those things that when they come out, they're 10 times worse, which doesn't help society.
It goes against other things that they've said is right. Like they said, gang membership could be an aggravating factor on whatever sentence that they were up. So why can't that just be a thing of an assault charge or a manslaughter charge? That the aggravating feature was that they snuck up behind this guy and fucking bash him in the back of the head with no provocation. Coming up with a whole separate piece of legislation and then saying it's going to do something that it clearly is not going to do is not solving that problem. They want to appear to be seen to be doing something. And I want to be clear, because the crunchies are going, oh, you're just sticking up for criminals. I don't give a fuck about someone that wants to get drunk and fight someone in the street. Fuck them. But if our leaders are sitting here and going, well, we've done this thing that's going to change society dramatically for the better, and it's bullshit, I'm going to call them on it. Now,
So let's do
a lot
this.
of the things, like a lot of the things that this government loves to do, is it's not a new idea that they've organically come up with before. Australia had a law like this when they went through a rash of people getting smacked in the fucking back of the head, hitting concrete and dying. So they thought that they had to jump in and dramatically change that as well. So that's what they did. They brought in a similar piece of legislation, and this window's not working for me.
I think you've
So, yeah.
accept all your cookies, mate. That's what you got to do. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. There it is. Right. Now it's nice and bright. So 10 years ago, the Aussies brought in a law. Single blow to the head or neck, usually without warning, leading to impact from the punch, but also impact to the ground, killing 172 Australians since 2000. Now, this sounds remarkably similar to what they're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It hasn't really worked. We have a specific legislation for these exact type of assaults in most Australian states, but the majority of these coward punch assaults aren't being charged or convicted under this legislation. We see relatively low utilisation of the laws designed for this purpose. Now, why would that happen? Because police and the Crown will prosecute what they can prove and what will get these people. So it doesn't matter if they have assault or coward punch assault and that sort of thing. They look there and go, well, can we prove that this meets the coward punch thing, or do we have a chance of losing that conviction?
Right.
So they go for the sure thing, which absolutely makes sense. But it shows that doing a separate piece of legislation, A, there's no mention of its deterrent effect. It's not getting used in the courts. They have 10 years worth of data from a society that's reasonably similar to ours, that it's not working as intended. But that's not the problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
They're not really concerned about that.
Any of the crunchies in our chat right now, or if you're watching this and on-demand crunchy, you're an on-demand crunchy, you just need to ask yourself this question. Do I want legislation and the courts and the justice system to make society function as well as it can? I would hope that everybody's answer to that is yes. And then do your research. The current system is not doing that. A new system needs to be found. Now, I think a lot of people don't like this because they think tree hugger, airy-fairy, treating these criminals with kid gloves. And I'm not saying that this is what anyone is suggesting, so I'll just use those words on my hypothetical, pushback from a crunchy. If using kid gloves led to a better outcome for everyone and society, wouldn't that be the best thing for us to do? And that's what we're in the process of doing. The lock them up and throw away the key, or the 3 strikes in the max, or the saying we're going to be tough on crime, but then the courts are going for lesser charges like what Chewie said because they want a conviction. None of that stuff's working. Even Bill English, and I talk about this, I forget where I cut in with Tamitha. Even Bill English, when he became Prime Minister after Sir John of Key left Parliament, Even Bill English talked about prison as the university of crime. It's like, we know this. This is not new ground we're traversing. We need to do something different. So let me put it this way, right? We need to do something different. We've got to try something different. Let's try this. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. If that doesn't work, let's try something else. Because locking them up and throwing away the key, or locking them up for sustained periods with no rehabilitation, no nothing, that one we already know statistically for decades is not working. I want to move on to the next one though, Chewie, because we've got, actually the thing is I want to keep moving because we've got quite a bit to get through and I want to get through it all, not be here till 1 a.m. Sir Christopher of Luxon is still with us, and he is talking about the first responders, violence towards first responders. And the question that's asked, which is the most obvious question, that if you're going to bring in this legislation, what's it going to do? How is this going to stop offending?
As a former frontline police officer,
Yeah, so Jenny May was a frontline cop. So she's great to have this conversation with.
I get the fear and I get the anxiety around that. My question is, though, how do we know that increasing or having harsher penalties will actually stop our frontline from being assaulted?
Well, I just think we've got a moral responsibility to do what we can to make sure we are protecting them. And so, the reality is we're seeing that increasing trend. We hope that this is actually a real deterrent that stops people from doing it. There are some pretty serious consequences, 3, 5.
I just need the government to show us any research that says deterrents are the thing that leads to less offending. I know that when I used to work on radio, this conversation would come up all the time, and I would say to them, that therefore means the states in America that have the death penalty should be the safest states, right? Because if the deterrent is the thing that stops offending, and I haven't done this for 15 years, I'm pretty confident saying it would be similar, if not the same. All of the states with the death penalty, worse crime stats. So the deterrent did not stop the crime. Show me some research where it says it does before you spout off this bullshit again that someone in the middle of a rage or alcohol or a mental health situation or whatever it is going to go, oh, actually, no, fellow chappie, we should stop doing this because I may go to jail for 2 years longer if I hit you in the head, you fall back and crack your head. It's fantasy land stuff. It's fairy tale stuff.
5 and 7 year sentencing based on, depending on what the assault looks like. But I think it's just entirely appropriate. I think, these are people who have chosen a career that actually is pretty awesome, and we need to esteem them, we need to value them, and we don't treat.
Why don't you fucking pay them better then? You want to value them and esteem them? Why don't you fucking pay them a bit better and keep them in our country?
Them poorly like this, and we need to protect them. So, it's just coming from that. I think any Kiwi watching this would say, look, that seems about right. That's entirely appropriate. We don't want those people getting bashed.
This is the second iteration of this bill, right?
We don't want those people getting bashed. So he's actively saying they will stop getting bashed if we introduce this. Horse shit. I call bullshit, Mr. Prime Minister. And this is why this is a talking point headline. Government stops first responders getting bashed. What do the stats say? Oh, they hasn't really changed at all. But the headline after today and this interview is government wants to stop first responders getting bashed. It's a headline. It's a legislation that doesn't need to be introduced and won't be implemented. Can't be implemented.
New Zealand First bill was voted down back in 2020. And the critics of that original bill argued that harsher penalties, they don't actually deter people from assaulting police or frontline people. And actually, because it's being done by people who are in crisis at that time, right?
Of course.
And so the argument has always been.
Or let's not use the flowery word of crisis. Or they're pissed, or they're high, or they're in a rage because their wife just left them. Whatever. Lots of other reasons where you cannot be thinking straight.
That actually there needs to be some preventative measures that are put in there. So access to mental health services, drug addiction services, all of those sorts of things, because ultimately we don't want them being assaulted in the first place. This is kind of a after the fact.
Yeah, but This is just one of many things that we're doing. We're also making sure we're getting proper mental health support for call-outs so that police aren't carrying the can.
You?
Hang on.
Are you?
Hang on. Some people call that defunding the police, Chewie. Are you aware of this? Getting proper mental health care out. In America, they call that defunding the police. That finances from the police would get directed to proper mental health care. Are you defunding the police, Mr. Luxon? Is that what you're talking about right now? I thought only bad people talked about defunding the police. That sounds like that's what you're talking about, because that's what defunding the police was sending out mental health callers with police to handle the situation differently. Ah, interesting.
When most of their, a lot of their calls have been for mental health issues. We actually want the mental health professionals to be there, when people are really experiencing crisis. But I just don't think there's any excuse for why you shouldn't do this. I mean, I honestly don't.
So we're going to keep going with the story, but I just wanted to pause for a second because the last part of this conversation, and it's only 60 seconds, is infuriating. Because what you hear Mr. Luxon say at least twice in this is, I don't care. I don't care. What if this doesn't work? I don't care. What does the research say about this? I don't care. We're just going to do it. You couldn't be more blatant with your, actually, the outcomes don't matter that much. It makes a good hairline. I don't care. Yes, Chewie.
Is it just that, or does he sneak in a I won't apologise?
Well, I'm not sure if he sneaks that in or
Because
not,
that's
but
his other favourite one. This is his other favourite word crutch when he's talking about law and order stuff. I won't apologise for being tough on crime.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking you to apologise. People are asking, like, is this going to work? Because the research says it doesn't. Well, I don't care and I won't apologise.
Right, well, let's see.
Will we see that?
He definitely says I won't care. I haven't taken down notes on I won't
Oh,
apologise. Let's see
get
if you're
your
right.
bets in, chat.
Hang on.
Get your
hang on.
bets in.
Get your drinks ready to consume if he says it.
The thing is, though, the Crimes Act already has or covers intentional harm. Penalties are between 5 and 14 years. So why do we need to make these changes?
I want it to be really explicit. I don't care. I want our police officers. I want our paramedics. I want our...
It's already there. I don't care that it's already there. I'm going to put it. I'm going to bold it. I'm going to highlight that it's there. I don't care.
Firefighters. I want our prison officers to feel safe, and I actually want to make sure we've done everything we possibly can to do so. So if the message is there's going.
That's interesting, eh?
He's lumped them in with first responders.
A bit of argy-bargy in a prison could therefore keep those prisoners in for longer. The prisoners that they want to keep in private prisons for longer to earn private prison providers more money. You like that one?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. Let's finish this. I have some thoughts about the term first responder.
All right, and we'll finish this.
Going to be a serious consequences for bashing a first responder, then actually, I'm sorry, we're doing it. We've also, you're right, we've got to do a lot of other things as well to make sure that we're putting more police out on the beat. We're making sure we are getting those mental health supports there. There's a lot more work for us to do in mental health in general, but there just needs to be zero tolerance for it. I mean, I'm sorry, but we have rights and responsibilities, and when a fellow citizen is there to try and help you, they don't deserve to get bashed or assaulted in any way.
But harsher penalties, is it a deterrent?
Might well be, and I don't care. I want it done because I want those people protected.
But you don't know that.
I'm telling you, I'm just saying to you, we want them protected. I don't think anyone watching this interview would say to me, you can't seriously not have tougher consequences for someone assaulting a paramedic trying to help you from St. John.
So is this going to work, Chewie? His response, I don't care.
Don't care. Don't care. I'm just doing this. It doesn't matter. I'm decisive. I'm going to change this, whether it changes things or not. Look, I want to talk about the fact that he's talking about first responders. Paramedics deal with a whole lot of stuff. They see people at their absolute fucking worst.
Yeah.
They're dealing with someone that's having psychosis, a mental health break, maybe it's drug induced, all of that sort of stuff. It's happening late at night. People aren't in their right head and they'll fucking lash out. Now, I am concerned about someone in that state then copping a charge because they're flailing around. I want to know what that vulnerable person, how they're protected from this legislation going forward. I want paramedics to be safe. Like, if someone was doing their job trying to save someone and an unrelated person came in and fucking smacked them in the back of the head, absolutely. Throw them down a deep, dark hole. That's fine. But my concern is here, the other first of all, who's assaulting a fireman? Like, I know firemen have had shit thrown at them. They've turned the hoses on them, that sort of thing. I think this is very specifically, think about the first responders that are coming into the most conflict when they turn up to the site, and it is the police. Now, they already have a charge for resisting arrest and assault and all of this sort of stuff, and it just feels like this is something that is going to get chucked on top.
Yeah.
And again, it is people that are not in their right mind. It is not going to be something that they stop and think about in a moment of crisis, in a moment of aggravation, in a moment of inebriation or drugs or all of the other things. It is not going to be part of their thought process. So it is not a deterrent, and it is not going to stop these assaults from happening. So the point there is, how is it making these people safer?
And let me let me ask this. You brought it up. I want to move on to Tamitha next. So we'll just in a few minutes or less if we can do this. A first responder innately and in and of itself responds to the public, the first people there. Who does a prison officer respond to as a first responder? He's putting, like you said, he's putting prison officers in there. Now that means if they're going to have the same ability to have an offender be charged with 2 extra years because these first offenders have been assaulted, that to me just seems like a way that you can keep people in prison for longer. Oh, we can slap another 2 years onto that now because you were flailing, because of whatever reason. But I want to know, who are they responding to, these first responders?
Yeah. Prison officers are not first responders.
No.
I mean, nobody deserves to be assaulted at work, but prison officers, I think that is part of the job description. They should have the tools and the processes to protect them.
Yeah,
The other quick thing, and I know when you want to get onto Tamitha, so I'm just going to say the one thing, because I read this story the other day. I don't have the link to hand, but it was a study of what has the biggest single impact on people that are more likely to have these interactions with first responders, that they have violent or troubled upbringings, or they're going down a path. They're mainly looking at youth offenders and that sort of thing. Do you know what it was? Do you know what had the biggest effect?
Right.
Stable housing. It was stable housing, because that is where it all starts. Knowing that you have your own place, that you have somewhere to build from. But that's too hard, because market forces and portfolios, and we can't be nice to poor people because they don't deserve it, because otherwise why are they poor?